Welcome to the Board Wrap-Up Show. I'm your host, Sean Anderson for Ponca City Public Schools, and the Board Wrap-Up Show is our monthly follow-up and recap of the Board of Education meeting. We're talking about the big December Board of Education meeting. I say big because it's the last one of the semester, but it was a relatively short board meeting. Shelley Arrott, Superintendent of Ponca City Public Schools, joins us every month. And Shelley, you say it was a shorter meeting this time.
It was a shorter meeting. We were probably finished by 8 o'clock, and a lot of times it's 9:30. So, and I think I've told you this before, Sean. We have committee meetings prior to the board meetings with 2 board members at a time. So they are updated in full prior to going into the board meeting. So they know all the details, and we don't have to hash them out during the board meeting.
Yeah. Well, the December Board of Education meeting started, as all of the Board of Education meetings do, with the Board of Education awards. And please, details.
Yes, this is always an exciting time. And our Certified Employee of the Month for December is Miss Katie Butler. She is a kindergarten teacher at Trout Elementary. She's the webmaster at Trout, and she's the tech coach. And as you know, during COVID, as we're learning remotely, those are very important jobs, and she's a lot of support to the teachers. So her colleagues were really proud of her. Our Support Employee of the Month for December was Mr. Ryan Dooley. He is our district IT director and still on the same page with managing hotspots, devices for our in-person learners and for our virtual learners. He has had a full-time job. Plus, don't forget about that ransomware attack at the beginning of the year and had to rebuild lots of servers and restore some software. And manage hotspots. That's a big thing too. So it was an honor to present Ryan with that award. Our Friend of Education for December is Jill Critchfield, and she was nominated by Woodlands Elementary. She has several children in the district. She is an avid supporter of Woodlands, but not just Woodlands, the entire district and public education. So we were certainly proud for her as well.
Very good. Well, after the Board of Education awards, there was a recess for a public hearing. Now, this was a public hearing for tribal leaders and Native American parents to discuss educational programs.
Yes, this is something we do every year. And Chris Littlecook, our Title VI Native American Education Coordinator, actually conducts that part of the meeting, and he shares information about impact aid. And impact aid is some relief that schools get if they have children who reside in their district that live on federal land that is tax exempt, because a lot of our funding comes from property tax, and federal land is exempt from property tax. So it's an offset. And last year we received about $73,000 in offset for our students who live on Indian land, and low rent housing land also qualifies. And Chris just talked about our activities and the educational opportunities for our students. We have about 22% of our students in grades 9 through 12 who are Native American students. And one thing that's always interesting, he goes through the list of students, the number of Native American students who participate in our extracurricular activities. We've had that discussion before too. Our extracurricular activities are so motivating for so many of our kids. And out of those 22%, we have about 17% of our Native Americans participating in at least one or more of our many activities that we offer. And that's not just sports, it's our fine arts, our music. So there's a good relationship between the district and the tribal leaders, and we meet other times throughout the year, and we've coordinated while we've been on distance learning and virtual learning, and it's been a good communication. And then I meet with tribal leaders once a month via Zoom just to talk about how we can support our students who are doing distance learning and virtual learning. So it was a good report, and we always talk about, should we update our policy, our Native American Community Relations policy, and we did not make any changes to that policy, and it can be found in our board policies section 2 for anyone who's interested in reading that.
Very good. Well, the biggest part of the December Board of Education meeting was the superintendent's report. What all did this include?
Well, I always do a COVID update this year in the superintendent's report. So I shared some information with our board members, talked about our county risk level, and prior to us being on distance learning, we track the number of students who are affected. We're not seeing a lot of the reports of students who are testing positive. We get some reports, and I shared that information. And since we've been on distance learning since the 23rd, we've had 32 student reports. Though we haven't had to do contact tracing with those reports because the students aren't in school. So we feel like there's more students who have tested positive. And in last night's press release, I put out a press release. It's very important that our parents let us know if their child tested positive during distance learning, or if they test positive over the winter break, because then they are exempt for 90 days from a quarantine. And we keep a running record of that, and we won't issue a name from contact tracing to the health department if they've tested positive within the last 90 days. So that's really important. During distance learning, we've had 18 staff members who have tested positive. And Sean, I don't know if we've spoken about this before, but also our board policy allows for up to 15% of our students at a particular site to come in to receive services that they can't receive virtually. For example, occupational therapy, physical therapy, it's just impossible to do. So we have had a little bit of contact tracing around some of our service providers and our students who are coming in for services. I always share the number of school days that we've had positives versus no positives. As of Monday, we had completed 74 school days, and we've had 28 days of no positives and 46 days of positives. And since we went on distance learning on the 23rd, we've only had one day that we didn't report a positive, either a student or a staff member, which speaks a lot to our risk level, right? And we talked about that. We talked about our peer school comparison and the number of the risk level number in each county. And it's safe to say we're all in a high level risk number now. I did speak with health department officials, and our risk number this last week was actually higher, but there were fewer new cases last week. And I'm like, how can that be? There was a reporting error the previous week, so they were playing catch up. And with so many pop-up testing facilities, the accuracy on reporting, I'm just not sure of, as far as to the health department, the state, or the locals. So we're using that as a piece of our data, but it is not our sole data. I always talk about what our peer schools are doing, and I had a superintendent's meeting right before this Zoom. And there are probably 200 or 300 superintendents that participate once a week, which has been a big support. We all know what each other happens to be doing in regard to COVID, and we get ideas from each other regarding responding to the pandemic. But at this point, it looks like most of the schools are returning, as we are, on January 4th or 5th. Sand Springs will be returning, Bartlesville will be returning, Enid, Owasso, Shawnee, Guthrie, Middle. Those are just a few of the schools in our area that are 6A. Yukon is returning. on that date. And we talked about, a big discussion is, should we delay starting for a week after the holidays because of possible get-togethers and family transmission? And we're 3 weeks out now from Thanksgiving, and we haven't seen a difference. So it would just be a guess. We will target our mitigation strategies rigidly, and we will be on it. We expect to be really busy when we return. So,
Well, January 5th will be that day for Ponca City Public Schools to return.
our teachers return on the 4th. It's a work day, professional day, and then our students return on the 5th. And there was some talk about bringing our students back on the 4th, since we've missed so many face-to-face days. But typically there are a lot of test results that occur over the weekend. So we can work with the health department on that Monday and maybe avoid several contact tracing events if we don't bring everybody back on Monday. So our students will come back on Tuesday. Some more things that we talked about, that I talked about in the superintendent's report, are some of the challenges that we're facing with distance learning. We actually put out a survey to our teachers and gathered some anecdotal data on some of their concerns, and they listed them, and I had to generalize because there were so many responses. And some of the concerns were, they're not reaching all of our students, obviously, and that's worrisome to our teachers. And when we can't lay eyes on our students, it's hard for us to recognize the signs of abuse or trauma and report to the proper authorities. So we know that some of our kids are living in trauma. We still make calls to DHS if we cannot contact the parent or the student. Many of our teachers drive by homes just to see if there's any action there, or it looks like anybody's home, and they'll call outside or stay on the porch and knock. But we're concerned about our students. Some of the other concerns are slow upload speeds through Google Classroom, sound and cameras not working, and a lot of our students have spotty internet service. So when you're trying to do 6 classes a day and you're already mentally stressed out and you're depressed and miss your friends and your internet service is spotty, that's a hardship on students. As our teachers said, that this was overwhelmingly a high response, that our students seem to be losing their motivation. They're getting used to not submitting work. And we talked to so many parents, and even our parents of our students that typically don't struggle say their students are struggling, and it's a battle to keep them motivated. And I talk to community members and parents every single day, and I will have to commend our parents. They have worked really hard, and it's been a horrible position that we've all been thrust into, and we need to get our kids back in school. Our teachers can't teach new concepts when everybody doesn't participate in the Zoom, and typically the class Zooms every day are the things that are most highly attended, because the students love to see their teachers and they like to see their friends. And our teachers say our kids just look depressed until they see their friends on Zoom. You know, it's just connection. Humans aren't meant to be in isolation, and our kids are feeling mental anguish, and hey, our teachers are as well. We all are. And it'll be good to get our kids back in school. We also talked about some of our successes with distance learning, and with anything, there always happens to be success on distance learning. And one thing that our teachers said, we've had more parent communication than we've ever had. When our students in our classroom, we may talk at parent-teacher conferences, or if an email's needed, but we get in touch with our students or our parents every single day if we can't reach the student. So there's been an increase in individual communication. Some of our teachers said that even some of our shy kids are not as afraid to share on the classroom Zoom. Even the shy kids are craving interaction. And they reiterated that the Zooms were the most exciting to the kids. Students are learning new technology skills. Our teachers are becoming more adept with using Google Classroom, as are our students. And they're learning some skills that will serve them well for the rest of their lives. So there are some success stories too. One of our teachers even said that she has a student that is excelling during distance learning because he's very introverted, and that just suits him fine to be in isolation. So she said he's actually excelling. We've also had some other successes not related to distance learning. And, while we've been on distance learning, our activities have been suspended. And that's not just sports, but that's like our student council, fine arts, those kind of things. We had the canned food drive, the student council canned food drive, scheduled for the week of November 30th. Our sponsors, Molly Carter and Alondra Keene, still held that. Students could not participate, but our students could drive by and put the non-perishable items on the porch at the high school. And we collected like 620 items and donated those to the mission. And that was like a record number. So people are really coming out to help. The student council blood drive was also scheduled during the distance learning time. And that's when our high school students donate blood. And we had it set up where the blood mobile was coming. OSBI was bringing the blood mobile. Well, there's a huge need for blood donation. So we decided to continue on with that, just not with students. So we put a plea out to our community. Our goal with our students was to have 38 students donate blood. We had 49 patrons donate blood. A lot of them are own staff members, but on that blood drive day, we saved 147 lives. So that's another success. Tonight we are still having, today's Wednesday, December 16th, we are still having the annual High Christmas Luminary celebration on the South Lawn at High. And our kids can't be a part of that. So we have had 14 employees who have stepped up, and we are going to make those luminaries happen. This will be the 53rd year. We did not want to let that tradition drop. But we think it's important because now is a time for a beacon of light and a beacon of hope in everyone's lives. So we continued on with that activity. So there have been some successes, definite challenges, but there have been some successes too. Another issue that we discussed is the mental health of our students. And we kind of touched on that briefly. And we asked our teachers to comment on issues regarding mental health. And they just feel like our kids are depressed and are craving that interaction. They're losing interest. We have some students who are getting in trouble because they don't have the structure of school in their lives. They're not logging on. They're missing their activities. So all of that weighed through our decision making. We also feel that a lot of our students are food deprived. On an in-person learning day, we serve 5,500 meals through our child nutrition program, but our average on distance learning is about 1,000 meals. And Jeff Denton, our child nutrition director, believes that about 25% of those meals are purchased by our staff who are on site. So huge hit. We know there are a lot of children who aren't being fed. So that's another reason that we need to get back in school. So
For sure. Well, January 5th will be the day. So
you're ready.
yeah, no doubt, for sure. Well, the December Board of Education meeting wrapped up with a short executive session, and then it was getting ready for the winter break, and then back to school on January 5th. And also wanted to ask you about extracurricular activities. We know during this distance learning that the board did vote last month to cease the extracurricular activities and sports, and everything came to a grinding halt. Then, when we come back to school on January 5th, will sports and extracurricular activities resume?
They will. I made that recommendation to the board for January 5th that our varsity level extracurricular activities resume. Now, that doesn't mean that our junior high kids are not going to be allowed to participate. We're just going to watch those risk level numbers. And if we can get the spread to slow down just a bit, I'm going to make the recommendation to the board to bring our junior high activities back in. But right now it's just a huge risk. We have a lot of students who are participating in junior high league activities, and they're going out of the community, and there's indoor facilities that are packed. Now, I will tell you, the governor signed an executive order to give us a little relief there. All youth activities in an indoor facility may only have 4 guests per participant, or 50% of the facility's capacity, whichever one is less. And I know our healthcare officials are really worried about our indoor activities with football. It was outdoor. We do have protocols set up for Robson when we return for basketball, and we will roll those out to the community shortly. But all of our events will still be live streamed, so that will be wonderful. We won't have as large of crowds, and there's some orders from OSSAA that we have to follow, and no one can be within 25 feet of the court. So that we measured on the lower level at the mezzanine of Robson, and that's about 6 rows of seats up. So it's going to limit our capacity, and likely what we'll do, well, it is what we'll do. We'll provide vouchers for participants' family members to attend. And OSSAA said we could have cheerleaders in the building, but they could not incite yelling from the crowd. And I'm like, well, that's going to be interesting. That's what cheerleaders do. But,
Right.
you know, I met with coaches on Wednesday and Thursday of last week, and those varsity level kids are going to lose opportunities as far as our cheer and steppers. So we've worked out a plan so that we can have them at those events, and their family will have 4 vouchers as well, but we won't be open to the public, but live streaming will be available. And if things change, we certainly hope they do. I met with the spring coaches as well, because if you remember, we went into mandatory closure last year. We didn't come back from spring break. So in the spring, we only had like a couple of preseason games under our belt for the spring sports. So I hurt so badly for those kids. They didn't have a season last year. So, by March, oh my goodness, I think we're rallying, and I want those kids to have a season. I want all of our kids to have a season, but this could be it for our seniors, Sean. And, sometimes there's some criticism on why we're allowing extracurricular, if we're on distance learning, and our board it didn't. But I visited with our board members individually prior to the board meeting, and rallied for them to allow our winter activities to practice over the break with some very rigid mitigation strategies. They have already missed competitions, and that's basketball, wrestling, and swimming. So I think I met with the coaches, and this is the expectation, and I'm going to advocate. We have to keep you and our students safe. And we've got a great plan. And I think all 3 sports teams have quite the practice schedule over the winter break. And then we're ready to start up. I think our home game, our first home event is not until the week after we return. So the week of the 11th. But we're excited about that. On my superintendent's meeting today, superintendents were saying they have their basketball teams quarantined because they had gone to this tournament or they played this team or that team. And the algorithm for contact tracing for basketball is if you are on the court, if you are in the field of play and someone from either team tests positive, everyone is quarantined. So there's that risk. I told our coaches and our parents and our teachers and our principals, every second that we are going to have with our kids is just a blessing. So let's enjoy it and make the most of it. And then I'm hoping by spring break, things will change. I was at chamber meeting yesterday, and Ponca City is going to be one of the hubs for vaccine. We will have one of the freezers for the vaccine. And one of our chamber members said that they had heard that the vaccine would roll out to the general public like about February. And we weren't expecting that till March or April. I am so hopeful that is accurate, but I would imagine we will be fighting quarantines and isolations through spring break. For sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that is going to do it for this edition of the Board Wrap-Up Show with Superintendent Shelley Arrott. Staying in contact with Ponca City Public Schools, it is very simple, and there are a lot of different ways to do that. You can go to pcps.us. Also, we encourage you to get the PCPS app for your device, and every school in the district has a Facebook page. It's a private page, so you're allowed to become a member of that private page for your child's school if you haven't done that already. Shelley,
and then we have our district Facebook page, which it's not private, so everyone can like that. And I put out a press release yesterday, and I told our patrons that I would put out another throughout the break just to stay in touch. And I'm probably over communicating, but I want to keep our people up to date. And people are concerned and wondering what the next step is. But I've heard from a lot of parents, and they are super excited for the students to return. And we are too. We had administrative council Tuesday, and our principals are trying to think outside of the box on ways to greet their kids and just make it special for them. If you remember my first year as superintendent here, we had the teacher walkout. So they pulled out all the stops when the students returned from the teacher walkout. I will have to say the teacher walkout was a piece of cake compared to COVID-19. So.
Right.
Hey, it's made us all stronger. It's made us all grow, more flexible, more adaptable, but we're going to be glad to reach the end, and we are going to get there.
And we're all much more tech savvy now.
Aren't we though?
Yeah, we are. Absolutely. This is the Board Wrap-Up Show via Zoom. So there you go. Shelley, thank you again.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. That will wrap it up for our Board Wrap-Up Show for December. We'll do it again next month after the January Board of Education meeting. For Shelley Arrott and for Ponca City Public Schools, I'm your host, Sean Anderson. Thank you for watching. Until next time.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Yes.